So, what we're gonna do next, chat, is this is one of your suggestions. Um, and I have a feeling that this may make me cry. I know how much you guys love it when I cry. We are going to watch Inmate 4859 from the Sabaton History Channel about about someone who deliberately went to concentration camp I think it was, excuse me, to, I guess, find out what was happening there or something to that effect. I'm not entirely sure. The set, no, homely, the song will probably be played in this. Um, I mean, this is during a horrific point in history, but it's a history that I'm not aware of. I'm not familiar with this story, and it's important to know about it. So, I'm probably gonna cry, chat. You guys already know that. But let's do it.
The story of Witold Pilecki is one of the great 20th century stories of bravery and sacrifice.
And our song Inmate 4859 is about the brave man, Witold Pilecki.
Okay, that's weird.
The story of Witold Pilecki is as tragic as it is heroic,
God.
and it is one for the ages. He was born
Oh god, he only lived to age 47. Fuck.
in the Russian Empire near the Finnish border in 1901, spent his youth as part of the nationalistic Polish Pathfinders, and fought in independent Poland's new army against the Soviets in the Polish-Soviet War. He lived a peaceful life for much of the interwar years, but eventually returned to the Army Reserve, and in 1939 was mobilized against the German invasion. Pilecki's Ulan regiment was shattered by the advancing Wehrmacht, but he joined other Polish stragglers and kept fighting until the fall of Warsaw. In late October, he disappeared into the underground, where he joined the resistance movement of the Tajna Armia Polska, an arm of the Armia Krajowa, the Polish Home Army. Now, one of their tasks was to get inside knowledge about German prisoner of war camps, and one camp in particular in the small town of Auschwitz in German, where many Poles simply...
Oh shit, he's going to Auschwitz itself? Oh fuck. Non, yes, typically, as we understand them, yes, Pathfinders are the ones that basically find routes into enemy territory for the remaining force. It's the Pathfinders is another name for like recon units.
disappeared. It was suspected that they were sent to Germany as forced labor, but no one knew for sure. Pilecki came up with a dangerous plan. He would personally infiltrate Auschwitz, uncover the truth, and organize resistance in the camp. On September 19th, 1940, using the alias Tomasz Serafiński, he intentionally walked into a German security sweep on the streets of Warsaw. SS men seized him, and the next day he was herded alongside other Poles into trucks at the Warsaw train station. All day they drove east. The men pressed together without food or water. Now, the rest of this story is told directly from the source material, from Pilecki's personal report about his experiences in the camp. It is not pretty. Arriving at the camp, Pilecki and the crowd of men were driven forward by brutal beatings from the guards. Some men were pulled out of the group at random, unprovoked, and shot in the head to break any thoughts of resistance.
Oh my god! Oh my god! I kind of was expecting this, but to just hear it so bluntly is... God.
Accompanied by the laughter of the guards, they were then pushed on past the barbed wire and towards the parade ground, where a group of men in striped clothes was waiting for them. These men jumped the newcomers with fists and clubs. Some were actually beaten to death. The men in the striped clothes then asked them questions about their backgrounds and their jobs. And those who said academics or doctors were knocked to the ground. With boots kicking against their heads, their murderers proclaimed that this is the concentration camp Auschwitz, my good man.
Okay, yeah. I'm gonna pause it here and say that this is probably going to get a lot worse. I'm watching it because this is history and it needs to be heard. And it's going to be painful, but I'm not going to hide away from history because history exists whether we like it or not. But if you want to step away, I understand. Feel free. I'm gonna watch this because it's important to watch. It's important to know this happened and to remember the people that this happened to. It's important that the memory lives.
His head shaved, Pilecki hurried out of the bathhouse, though a guardsman knocked out 2 of his front teeth because he did not hold the sign with his prison number between them. From now on, Pilecki was neither himself nor Tomasz, but a number, prisoner 4859. In his paper-thin blue and white striped uniform and a pair of ill-fitting wooden shoes, he found himself once again on the parade ground. There, he encountered the murderous men again. They were called capos, prisoner functionaries. Often German or Polish criminals, they were tasked with, let's say, keeping things in line inside the camp, since the regular SS men lived in barracks outside, right? Most of the capos were violent sadists who enjoyed brutally beating and torturing the helpless prisoners. Wearing yellow armbands with the capo label, they also oversaw the labor companies, to one of which Pilecki was assigned. In that labor company, it became clear that Auschwitz aimed to first exterminate the Polish intelligentsia. Prisoners with academic backgrounds who were not used to demanding physical work or who lacked the experience or the dexterity to work in the quarries were mercilessly beaten to death by the capos. Being too exhausted to lift another brick or to push a wheelbarrow was also a death sentence. Every evening, fewer people returned to the main camp.
Good fucking God. Like, we're only we're not even 5 minutes into this. And already we're seeing the personification of evil.
I think they were all SS too.
I don't know. Let's be honest. Does it fucking matter? I don't fucking care if they were SS or if they were not SS. They were fucking monsters. It doesn't fucking matter who they work for. Let's get real fucking honest here. It does not matter what army they were part of, who they worked for. None of it fucking matters. They were evil monsters. That is the only thing that matters. That is it.
Every walk to the latrines, every trip to the bathhouse was accompanied by beatings and harassment. Those who came late to mourn
Hitler's upper echelon were some of the worst monsters in history. They don't even qualify as people.
Morning parade or tried to hide away were hunted down, dragged to the parade ground, and either hanged or shot in front of the others. Many tried to kill themselves, usually early in the morning before the day of torture began. If
Oh my
anyone tried
fuck.
to escape, the whole block was punished for it. Standing out in the open for hours or doing punishment sports where men too exhausted to lift their arms fell down
God.
and died under the boots of the capos. Often, the only time to catch your breath was when they were busy murdering another prisoner. Pilecki's
Oh.
good physical condition saved him from this fate, but for how long could that last? Well, Pilecki set out to build his first resistance cell, a group of 5 men. Later, he
What the hell? Would anyone have the willpower to form a resistance? How? Listen, I'm. I'll be realistic. If I was in this position, I would be too terrified to do any kind of resistance. And I know a lot of people, a lot more than are willing to admit, would be the same. I'm sure if you pose the question to people, or if you presented this, and they'd say, oh yeah, I'd fight back, I'd be part of the resistance. I'm calling bullshit. If you get marched into this place, and within the first 5 minutes, you see a cluster of people yanked out of line and gunned down, just because they can. And then you are beaten for literally no reason, often to death, and worked until exhaustion, and then beaten to death because you're worked to exhaustion and can't work anymore. Do not try and tell me, oh yeah, I'd fight back. 'Cause I will call you a fucking liar. I will call you a fucking liar.
would create other 5er groups, but none of them knew of the existence of the others. So in case they were captured and tortured, they could not betray the whole network, right? Those groups would either organize food or clothing or would help other members to get a job, since it was clear from day one that staying in the worker groups, the labor groups, even well-conditioned men like Pilecki would soon die. So many of those worker prisoners did in fact die that the prisoners had to build the first camp crematorium. Pilecki noted that the camp became one big mill which ground living people to ash. In 1941, as more and more prisoners were brought in, the camp grew. Larger fences were needed, more barbed wire and more guard towers. And as Auschwitz grew, it needed to feed itself. And this opened up jobs for the older prisoners. With careful planning, Pilecki got his 5er groups into the carpenters, the postal service, and the barbers. He eventually got himself a job as a repairman for an oven inside an SS man's house outside the camp. Upon leaving the living hell of Auschwitz, he returned to a world of lavish gardens.
Wait, I'm sorry, I missed that. I was looking back and forth between
Inside
chat.
an SS man's house outside the camp. Job as a repairman for an oven inside an SS man's house outside the camp. Upon leaving the living hell of Auschwitz, he returned to a world of lavish gardens, laughing children at play, and villagers having normal, everyday conversations with one another. Pilecki felt the questions burning inside him. What was the real world? What was the real nature of man? What was the culture of the 20th century? Since mankind had advanced so far from the barbarism of old, how is this still possible? Or was this the true face of humanity? Would the whole world look like this if the boundaries of civilization disappeared?
The, the bigger question I think here is how many of those people outside of the camp that he saw where they were happy and had cultivated gardens and were living happy lives, how many of them knew what happened in the camp? That's the question. And, well, Atsunashi, that's my question. Are we sure of that? Are we sure that they knew? Because I'm not so certain that they knew. With the Nazi Party, they twisted facts like you wouldn't believe. They used in addition to, well, okay, they saw the smoke, but did they know they were from the crematoriums? I'd say yes, it's absolutely within plausibility that a few knew. I do believe a few knew. Yes. But I don't know if they all did. I honestly don't know. And it's I will say that is possible, Atanashi. And again, I'm not like defending or castigating anyone from the community outside of Auschwitz because I don't know. I do not know. They could have been completely ignorant of this and were told lies by the Nazi Party that they merely accepted because that's just what they did. They may have known and ignored it and were, monstrous people as well. I do not know. I don't know how many people actually do know. 'Cause the town, like, how far was the town from Auschwitz? That's another thing. I'm not sure how far like, if the town was, like, say, 10 miles from Auschwitz, it's entirely possible they don't know. They knew it might have been, like, a prisoner camp. Certainly, they might have known it was a prisoner camp. But they may very well not have known the horrors that took place in there because it's distance away. The Nazi Party probably kept the average citizen from getting even close. Yeah. I don't know, but it must have been fucking torturous. This is a new kind of torturous hell. To be able to leave the camp, go to an SS officer's home, and see happiness. To be able to see happiness and not be able to partake of it. To know that this happiness was not for you. And that in a very brief amount of time, you were going to be back in that hell. And this was just basically like, it would not surprise me if this was just another form of torture. Where they would have these prisoners go to tend to the officers' homes just so they can see you will never have this kind of life again. It's just a form of torture.
Each morning, he and the other prisoners.
If they did know or not did not matter much. Even if they did, what do you want to do? Revolt against that practice. You end up in a labor camp, or they simply make you vanish.
I know. It's not so much a I expected them to do something about it. It's not that. It's more of the thing of, like, I've always been under the belief that the majority of the people of Germany did not agree with The majority of the people of Germany did not think the way the Nazi Party did. That is what is something I've always believed. And that's why I want to know, why I kind of want to know. Because I want to know if this still holds true for this specific group of people. Because it's something that I want to know. That's why.
Prisoners found themselves surprised to be alive. Their bodies thin to the bone, black and blue from the daily beatings, riddled with lice and fleas, living on a starvation diet. Only his daily mantra, "You're not giving up," helped Pilecki keep on and try to inspire others to do the same. Survival was only possible through friendship and mutual help. Loners died quick. Now, up until May 1941, it was possible for ordinary Poles to be released from Auschwitz, mostly by their families paying enormous sums to the Germans. Those released prisoners smuggled Pilecki's notes to the Armia Krajowa, but when the war between Germany and the Soviet Union began, this stopped. Instead, new groups began arriving to the camp. Many were now Jews, and by the end of August, the first Soviet prisoners were transported to Auschwitz. Pilecki reports that one day, 700 officers were tightly packed into a room all day, till finally a group of German soldiers with gas masks on threw gas containers inside. This was the first act of gassing people with hydrogen cyanide at Auschwitz, according to Pilecki. Soon after, though, on his way to work, he passed groups of naked Soviet prisoners waiting to be led into the crematorium, where they were gassed and burned. The capos were often brutal savages, but the bestiality of some of the SS guards was even worse. Pilecki tells of guard dogs trained to go for the throats of prisoners, the torture of smashing testicles with a hammer, and many stories far too nightmarish to tell here. Now with his cells set up in important positions all over the camp, Pilecki was ready to start a revolt, but he needed help from the outside to be successful. The prisoners were thirsty for revenge, and they were ready for anything since they did not fear death after all they had endured. But even had they managed to overwhelm the guards and take the camp, they would not be able to hold it for long. Pilecki believed that the Armia Krajowa had received at least one of his messages. He had urged them to stage an attack or send in paratroopers from the Free Polish Army over in Britain or drop a crate of arms onto them or something. But so far, nothing. Without help from the outside, Pilecki's third Christmas in Auschwitz came and went. And Auschwitz was now changing. There was no longer collective punishment, no outright murder, or even everyday brutality, or at least it was toned down. See, Auschwitz became a factory which would now systematically murder its prisoners instead of individualistic random killing. Not with the batons of the capos, but with phenol and gas. There were 3 crematoriums working simultaneously, able to burn corpses within.
The NSDAP Nazis brought great success to the German people after the Depression, even if it was fake. Plainly, the majority of Germans were more than willing to turn in their own neighbors and family to keep the imagery economic success.
Oh God. That imagery. No, I'm not. No, I'm not, and I shouldn't be. No, I'm not calling it. No, I'm not. I'm not gonna dishonor the memories of these people by turning a blind eye to it. No, I'm not stopping. The people who died here We owe it to them to see this. We need to see this. This is important. There.
Minutes. By April 1943, more and more of the surviving Poles were sent out of Auschwitz to make room for Jewish prisoners from all over Europe and the Soviet Union. This meant the end of Pilecki's network, as its members were sent to other camps. So after 2 years and 7 months of surviving in Auschwitz, Pilecki decided it was time to break out, since an uprising was no longer possible. He got a night shift job at a bakery outside the camp. Shortly after Easter, as one guard was asleep, he and 2 other men pushed the door open and ran. Shots cracked out behind them, but they ran all night and all day until they reached a small town. With help from patriotic Poles, Pilecki smuggled himself back to Warsaw, where, on August 23, 1943, after nearly 1,000 days in Auschwitz, he met with commanders of the Armia Krajowa, telling them of his experiences, all the death, all the torture, but people hesitated to believe him. It seemed all too unbelievable, even for the hated Germans to do.
Oh, God. I didn't think it was possible. I didn't think it was possible that even back then, this is why knowing history is so fucking important. Because even back then, people said it's too fantastic to believe. This has to be wrong. This has to be misinformation from a survivor of something like this. This is why history is so important. Because it's repeating. We're seeing it repeating.
All this killing. They knew it was bad, but not this bad. Pilecki would stay in the underground army and fight in the Warsaw Uprising of 1944. He was later interned in prisoner of war camps, and after liberation in 1945, was assigned to the Second Corps of the Polish Army in Italy, where he turned in his report about Auschwitz to the British. For Pilecki, Auschwitz was the symbol of the Polish struggle for existence. He himself could never go back to a normal civilian life after experiencing what you've just heard. He maintained contact with the underground resistance, now against the Soviet Union, after the war, and indeed returned to Poland in late 1945 to report on the Soviet occupation. He lived and worked undercover, but on May the 8th, 1947, the Ministry of Public Security captured him. He was tortured and dragged before a kangaroo court and accused of many things, including espionage and planning an armed uprising. The sentence was death. On May 25th, 1948, in the Mokotów prison in Warsaw, Witold Pilecki was executed. His final resting place remains unknown. In 1990, Pilecki and others from that show trial were rehabilitated, and today he is celebrated, and with good reason, as a Polish patriot and a hero. Now, we cannot even imagine what he went through and what courage it must have taken.
He went. He went. He went. Oh, that. He went through all that. It feels like. It feels like he went through all of it for nothing. It feels like he went through all of it for nothing. Oh, that pain, all that torture. They
to do so. It's a pretty heavy story, you know?
Yeah, I gotta be honest, I don't know how many people we researched for the Heroes album, but if there ever was a slam dunk, pardon my language, what the fuck moment, this was it, I would say.
And it is, their sacrifice is one thing, bravery is another thing, but doing all of that, I mean, think of the odds. I mean, getting in and getting out.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to Auschwitz on purpose.
And then I'm going to get out on purpose, and doing all that for a cause and for what is essentially a noble and a just cause any way you slice it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm so surprised also that how isn't there a major Hollywood blockbuster about this?
That makes no sense at all.
Yeah, and people are coming up with, Hollywood scripts. I mean, I'm not bashing the film industry here, don't get me wrong, but I mean,
Please
people
feel
are
free to
making
bash them.
scripts that are less fantastic and not true, and still nobody.
Robosburn, I understand. I understand he's seen as a hero in his home country. But he told that his military counterparts, he told them what was going on. He told them about the hell on earth. That was this place. And nobody immediately jumped to do something. It was how many years later that he finally freed the people from Auschwitz? How many years later? That's what I mean by it was for nothing. How many more thousands, hundreds of thousands died in that place before they finally freed it? That's why I say that.
And this is a true story, and even the tragic ending and stuff,
Yeah.
That's
Maybe that's why they're not doing it.
well, they could throw in a romantic interest or something. They could have Gwyneth Paltrow, maybe. I don't know.
Romance in Auschwitz, great.
And I can tell you why Hollywood won't make the movie about it. I can tell you why. Because, number one, they don't have anyone that can tell this story properly. And number two, there's no way that this story would be given any proper justice. Most screenwriters would probably go, "Oh, this is too tough of a subject, I'm not even going to deal with it." Because the writers in Hollywood are fucking pussies. They can't handle hard emotion. They can't handle the fact that history is ugly. Uh, eh, uh, Doc, he, and I think it was Spielberg, he kind of did with Schindler's List. Spielberg, I'm pretty sure I think it was Spielberg who did Schindler's List, which does touch on this. It does. Schindler's List touches on this subject. So, he did. But this is you'll never find anybody to tell this story right.
This reminds me of the time when we saw the film, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, in high school, and there were kids laughing at the ending. It was disheartening.
And that's why you won't get a proper movie. You will not find anyone in Hollywood right now that will be able to tell this story. You and the ones that could, they're too old. They're too old to tell the story. They're too old to dig into this. They don't want to.
Cheer 100. This is why I love Sabaton and TFE. They tell the stories that we need to hear with respect.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Stranger things have happened in Hollywood.
Yes, true.
You know, but that leads you to wonder. I mean, there must have been romantic stories in Auschwitz.
I guess so. I mean, we met a woman called Anna who fought in the Polish resistance
Okay.
during the uprising.
Yeah.
She actually said that, yeah, there was, well, she was flirting with a guy in the middle of, you know, I mean, not as they were shooting, I guess.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, but that's not 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
exactly. So, I mean, she said it's strange how man, or, you know, you can normalize such a extreme situation and life still goes on. You still go
It's
to the toilet, everybody
heartbreaking
understands that,
that you
but
can
you're still
normalize
actually
it.
falling in love while fighting or waging a war, you know? It's weird.
And if this guy could break out, then of course you could break from the men's side to the women's side.
Yeah.
You know, it's nothing. I mean, if there's one thing this all proves, is nothing is impossible. Nothing is as impossible as you think. I know, but it is. It's, you know what would, even more than just a Hollywood movie, it'd be a good miniseries.
Yes,
You know?
actually. HBO, do you hear this?
See, if anybody out there's HBO is listening, and Yuki and I'll write it. I mean,
Would
I'm
you
a
really
writer,
trust
and he's good at
HBO with
emotions,
this
so
right
together
now?
we could do it.
Yeah, but don't put me in acting in it because I suck as an actor. So
As we've noticed over these months of
Yes.
Sabaton history, ladies and gentlemen. What about the actual song itself, though? Did you decide on the topic before you wrote the song, or did you have the music sitting around and
wrote the music with Peter, our producer.
Okay.
The first time we wrote a song together, and him, you know, coming from, you know, Lindemann, Pain, Hypocrisy, those bands, and the harder side of things, it became a bit of a harder and very, very dark song. So as we were writing that song, I realized that this is the song, because obviously, even though it's a very, very, you know, we're singing about a very courageous man, it would not have made sense at all to have a, you know, proud,
No, me
uplifting
neither,
song
Johnny.
for the
Me
subject.
neither.
especially, yeah. I wonder what he was like as a person, like personality-wise, because you don't. I mean, from the story, you can see, okay, he's got a lot of dedication. But you meet someone on the street, you don't know if they're a dedicated type person or not. No. So it would be really interesting. Well, that's your homework, guys, to go and put the song on and think of Witold Pilecki.
That's all for today. Thank you very much.
See you next time.
All right, everyone, here's the drill. A lot of you have been supporting us through Patreon, and I'd like to thank you all so much for that. It really helps. That's what makes this channel happen. So click on subscribe. You know the drill, basically. And I just wanted to say thank you all. See you soon.
This only got 13,000 likes from 4 years ago. Eh. Thank God. God. Oh, man. Oh. Oh, man. Oh. Yeah, that one was tough. That one was tough.